Hello everyone, and welcome back to Inside ArtScroll, where the books you read and the people who write them come to life. Today I am privileged to be joined by Rabbi David Sutton, author of a new translation and commentary on the Beis Halevi on Ahavas Yisrael. Thank you, Rabbi Sutton, for joining us once again.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's not the first time you're here. You're what I would call a prolific author, Baruch Hashem. You've put out many best-selling ArtScroll works, the latest of which is your commentary and insights on the Beis Halevi on Ahavas Yisrael. I must mention that it follows the immense success of your commentary on the Beis Halevi on Bitachon. It's a similar style. Another essay of Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik of Brisk, the Beis Halevi. Talk about your experience of putting out the Beis Halevi on Bitachon and the reaction that you got to that I imagine was what was the impetus that you should continue kind of this series of working on the essays of the Beis Halevi and bring it out to the public.
So as is well known, the Beis Halevi was a great Rosh Hashiva, what's called a great Lamdin, and in a very short and succinct fashion, he captures topics in a way that I have never seen. And he's well known for his responsa, he's well known for his commentary on the Torah, but because these specific essays were in manuscript form, literally in a suitcase, till the late 1900s, over 100 years after he passed away, they're not well known. And when I stumbled upon the essay on Bitachon and started giving shiurim on it, and it just slowly developed into this sefer. Now there are people that are aware pamphlets were circulating on Beis Halevi on Bitachon, but they're not aware that he had more than one essay in that manuscript. There's actually a lot in that manuscript. It's in the back of one of the Beis Halevis on the Torah that most people might not even have. Mm-hmm. And the next one is the essay on Ahavas Yisrael. And my hope is that what the Beis Halevi on Bitachon did for Bitachon, the Beis Halevi on Ahavas Yisrael will do for Ahavas Yisrael.
Well, the style that you used in the Beis Halevi on Bitachon really resonated with people. It's a simple elucidation, so you're explaining the text in a way that anyone could understand. Men, women, children, no matter what their age or background, they could open it up and start studying it. And then you have insights on bottom, which give a little more background and explanation. And then you have amazing appendixes, and in this volume you also have a whole section of stories, so it's a very rich reading experience. It's not just a dry read of an essay. It really, there's so much, I'll call it flavor, in what you did over here. Yeah, I would tempt anyone to open up this book and just not be drawn by the message. It's very universal, it's very uplifting, it's very positive. Just that feeling that you get when you read it, and obviously Bitachon as well, same thing.
Like you're saying, it really is. It looks like a sefer, but it reads like a novel. It's something interesting that I actually was flattered. I got a call 2 days ago from Simcha Bunim Cohen that he had just gotten this sefer and he loved it. So you're talking about a great posek in Lakewood. At the same time, a young lady told me, wow, I'm really enjoying it. So mm-hmm. It's really something for the masses. The Beis Halevi has a certain schus. Interesting that the sefer was supposed to come out before Pesach, was ready to go. And due to certain marketing decisions, they decided, let's wait till after the Haggadah season and we'll sell it afterwards. And it went to print literally on the Beis Halevi's yard site.
Wow.
It was in Dalet Iyar. It was being printed here in ArtScroll. So the Beis Halevi is definitely behind this, mm-hmm. No question.
And there's no coincidence. So.
Absolutely.
But it's an unbelievable schus. You alluded to before, which I think it's worth taking a moment to talk about. And I became familiar with it somewhat thanks to you. Not long ago, I wrote up in the Yated an interesting historical background of these manuscripts that the Beis Halevi wrote in the 19th century. And the manuscripts had sat in a suitcase. But the story about how the manuscripts got out of Europe to America is alone an unbelievable tale of hashgacha. Just comment on that for a moment.
You could call it a mini Kriyas Yamsuf, because the Beis Halevi's youngest son, Rav Simcha, who was 13 when his father passed away, was the one that inherited these ksavim. For some reason didn't go to Reb Chaim or any of the other children. And on his way out to America, he's taking these ksavim with him, his last remnant of his father. And he stopped at the Russian border, questioned, only because his name was Soloveitchik, and there was a communist officer who was left as an infant in Reb Chaim's house, because Reb Chaim's house was just in Hefker, Rishus HaRabim. His parents left him in the house. Reb Chaim raised these orphans. He eventually became a communist because he wasn't raised by Reb Chaim. He was just in his house. When he heard the name Soloveitchik, he says, "Are you any relation to Reb Chaim?" He said it was his brother. So he went through all the borders with the Svarim and everything. So that was one Kriyas Yamsuf. Then, when they were in England, they were ready to go to the boat, and they realized that getting out of the hotel, and they realized that the suitcase wasn't there. And they traced their steps back, and they realized they forgot it in the trunk of the carriage, the horse and buggy. And now, how are you going to find it? So Simcha's son, who was named after the Beis Halevi, Rav Yosef Dov, he went to the police department, found that there's pictures of the wagon drivers. He went through over 2,000 licenses, recognized the wagon driver, went to his home, and in the trunk, so to say, of the horse and buggy was that suitcase. And his father said, "I'm not leaving the country if I don't have that suitcase." So this is like literally a miraculous trail. Like the Gemara says, Baruch Shanasan Olam L'Shomrim. Hashem gave his world to watchmen. And for some reason, Hashem decided to let it out now.
Right. If you think about it, over the decades, over the centuries, over the millennia, how many precious manuscripts of gedolim, Talmud Chacham, have gotten lost. And like you said, for whatever reason, these manuscripts had special siyata d'shmaya, really through miraculous sequence of events, to be extricated and to be saved from the inferno that ultimately consumed much of Europe and came over here. And what's just as incredible is that till I think it was 1985, and we discussed this previously, the manuscript of the Beis Halevi on Bitachon was not revealed to the public.
Right. It's only because Rabbi Soloveitchik called Rav Yitzchak and his brother of Simcha and asked them, "Do you have anything left from the Beis Halevi?" He says, we have some things. And he put in the back of one of the Chumash Svarim. So it's a miracle. I have a hunch, and again, the Beis Halevi and Bitachon came out right at the beginning of COVID, where the world needed Bitachon.
Meaning the ArtScroll version.
The ArtScroll version, right? That I don't think close to 20,000 copies sold. I don't know if any other version in English sold that many. And the Ahavas Yisrael is coming out now, and I have a hunch now as well why it's coming out post-COVID. If you'd like to hear, I don't know.
Yeah, sure, I'd love to hear. But before you get to that, I'll preface your comment with a common observation. You put up Beis Halevi on Bitachon. It's sold phenomenally well. You also, not long after, put out Daily Dose of Bitachon, a sefer based on the Chovos HaLevavos, Shar Bitachon. Bitachon sells. People want Bitachon. They look at it rightfully as a conduit, as a way of...
A magic button.
Yeah, and Bitachon is not a simple matter. Emunah and Bitachon, having Emunah perhaps is a little easier. Bitachon really relying on the Rebbeinu Shalom and not relying on anyone else is a harder level to reach, but something that obviously every person must strive for. And Bitachon talks to people. So Beis Halevi on Bitachon came out also at an opportune time. People looking for chizuk in that realm, in that area. Ahavas Yisrael, as an exciting topic, perhaps doesn't have that allure of Bitachon. People wonder why Ahavas Yisrael. Obviously, it's important. It's a mitzvah in the Torah, and it's an important topic to know. But how do you see that connection between Bitachon and Ahavas Yisrael, and if it talks to people in a similar fashion?
Well, like you said, Bitachon could be selfish.
Right.
And Ahavas Yisrael is selfless. You're loving somebody else, so it's harder.
Exactly.
Bitachon does bring to Ahavas Yisrael, because if you really believe Hashem's controlling the world and relying on Him, there's no reason to dislike anyone.
Exactly.
Like it says, sinas chinam, there's no such thing as sinas chinam. It's for a reason. Exactly. You feel that someone did something wrong to you, 100%. Or whatever it may be. But
that's why someone commented to me, the greatest Musar sefer is a sefer on Bitachon. Because if you really master Bitachon, I'm just, segueing from what you just said, then suddenly Kina and Taiva and Kavod and all those kind of negative attractions suddenly fall away. Because if you have true Bitachon, Why are you running after kavod? Everything comes from the Rabbanu Shalom. Why are you envious of your fellow if everything is coming from the one above? So it's a very, very, important point to digest.
But because people, do need incentives, it's interesting, in the back of the book, in the appendix section, the first appendix is called Incentives and Benefits. It means there are, Hashem will love you, Hashem treats you accordingly, and so on. So there is definitely a benefit.
There is a personal benefit.
There's a personal
You
benefit.
actually bring very interesting observation from the Beis Halevi, and then you add something from the Chavetz Chaim that, Achamev Esrim, after a person goes to the next world, we're going to be asked certain basic questions, one of which is Tzipisa Yeshua, if we yearn for the ultimate redemption. And he says, in a really a fascinating observation, that really included in the question of Tzipisa Yeshua is, did you have Ahavas Yisrael? Because a prerequisite for meriting the ultimate Geula is Ahavas Yisrael. Sinas Chinam is what's keeping us back. So we're going to be asked, Tzipisa Yeshua, one of the components of Tzipisa Yeshua is, did you master Ahavas Yisrael in order to enable the Yeshua? That's part of yearning. If you claim to be yearning for the Yeshua, but at the same time you're harboring negative thoughts towards fellow Yidden, then you're holding back the Yeshua. It doesn't work. So I thought that's very, that's an interesting observation on the part of Beis Halevi.
We spoke about timing. It came out, the week of the day of the Beis Halevi's yard site. But also the time of the year. We learn Pirkei Avos now. Chaim Ben Sion Abba Shaul explains why do we learn Pirkei Avos now, and he comes up with a novel explanation. There's different standard explanations. He says that B'Nisan Nigalu, B'Nisan Asidin Ligal. That means we're supposed to be redeemed in Nisan. Nisan passed and we weren't redeemed. We're supposed to ask ourselves, why not? And the answer is obviously because Sinas Chanim is still here. So therefore, work on Ahavas Yisrael now and learn Pirkei Avos. But it means this is the time of the year to learn Ahavas Yisrael.
Right.
So it works out,
Right, it really does. Going through the manuscript, did you have anything to work with? Because, like we mentioned before, this is an essay of the Beis Halevi that really was kind of hidden. It's in the back of Beis Halevi al HaTorah. I don't know. Are there any other works on this particular essay of the Beis Halevi?
No. So what I did was, I really read every word and stopped on every word. I'll give you an example, and every word is packed here. As I'm flipping through, I noticed my father-in-law's essay that we shouldn't forget about.
Of course.
But,
you mentioned that Rabbi Sutton, your father-in-law, Rabbi Nosson Sherman, wrote the overview to this sefer.
So he writes over here, Al kain tzarich kol adam leorer bilibo aval hakol. You have to arouse your heart for love to everybody. And if you didn't arouse a love in your heart, lo kiyem mitzvah tasezu. You did not fulfill the mitzvah. So again, similar to how he starts off the essay on Bitachon, is he starts off, it's a mitzvah taseh by the Beis Halevi. That's it. This is a positive command. This is tefillin. This is an esrog. There's no difference.
Right.
And that's one of the interesting we bring down over here from the Yisod V'Sharash Avoda, that he saw someone had a tear in his clothing, a small tear. Before he told the man about the tear, he said, L'shem Yichud. I'm not going to say L'shem Yichud. I'm doing the mitzvah Save Ahavas Yisrael. And then he told him, you have a small tear, and a small tear can become a big tear, sew it up. And he says, I had the same feeling of happiness as when I put on my tefillin in the morning.
Wow.
That's Ahavas Yisrael, but you have to arouse it in your heart. It's a positive, you have to do something. It's not passive, I like everybody. No. And furthermore, it's your heart, which is a big discussion. Can I fulfill Avat Yisrael without doing anything? The Beis Halevi holds yes. It's a discussion. We're going to go through the insights and the footnotes as to, but clearly the Beis Halevi holds yes. You could sit in a room. Furthermore, the Alter of Kelm also in the insights says, footnotes, he says that if right now I'm thinking there's, I don't know how many million Jews in Eretz Yisrael now? I think 7.5 million, 8 million. And I close my eyes and I honestly love every single Jew, I get 8 million separate mitzvahs.
Wow.
And he says because the Yetzer Hara always wants to take away from us the big mitzvahs, and that's why he's attacking that. And the opposite, we also quote there from the Sefer Abris, a great rabbi from Volozhin, that if I hate a sect of Jews, and there's 100,000 of them, So that's
You get an Avera for
100,000
each one.
negatives.
Right.
So there's a lot of depth and every word of the Beis Halevi is weighed, and you're learning Be'in, no difference than if you take out the Shalos Chuvas Beis Halevi and you got to work on it. This is Reb Chaim's father. People still work on Reb Chaim every word. He didn't write a word that he wasn't thinking about. Beis Halevi is no different.
Right. It's interesting what you're saying, because really these essays of the Beis Halevi, we would call them hashkafic works.
Right.
But the Beis Halevi, as you said, was the Rashiva, the Lamdin, the halachic master. It's all looked through the prism of halacha also.
Right.
Halacha meaning what's a mitzvah, what's not, and what are the parameters of the mitzvah. But you bring up a good point. We think of Ahavas Yisrael and Chesed as the, filling up a Bikur Cholim room in a hospital, which is amazing. Being a Chaver member and helping someone with their flat tire. But as you say, the Beis Halevi brings out that you don't have to be on site engaged in that public mitzvah to be Mekayim Ahavas Yisrael. It's very much a very personal, internal endeavor. But speaking of the Beis Halevi's essays, there is another essay I just want to mention. The Beis Halevi wrote 3 essays, one on Bitachon, one on Ahavas Yisrael, and one on Anava, on humility, which I imagine you'll probably work on, right? Oh, you already started?
Started, yeah.
Wow, okay, you waste no time. But it's just it's fascinating to observe that of all the topics that the Beis Halevi chose outside of his responsa and outside of his commentary on the Torah, that he decided to write essays on these 3 particular topics that obviously he felt that he had something to give over to Klal Yisrael. I'm just curious, as someone who's now gone through extensively through 2 of his essays, why do you think that is?
Well, there's definitely a connection between these 3 things. Bitachon being the starter, like we said, without Bitachon you can't love. And without Bitachon you can't be humble, because if you think you do things, Hashem malach geus lavish, only Hashem can be arrogant or proud, because only He does things.
Right.
We don't do anything. There's an interesting line of the Beis Halevi once asks somebody, what are you doing? The man says, I'm working sugar production. So again he says, what are you doing? He said, I work in sugar production. The 3rd time, thought the Beis Halevi lost his mind. He says, when I ask you what you're doing, I mean, what are you doing for Yiras Shamayim? Because Akol b'dei Shamayim chutzim Yiras Shamayim. So if I ask you what Hashem's doing with you, that's sugar. I ask you what you're doing. So you can't become arrogant if your attitude is, what am I doing? I'm struggling through a daf. That's what I'm doing. What's Hashem doing with me?
Beautiful. When you went through this essay of the Beis Halevi, were there any anomalies, something that you came across that was an eye-opener to you, besides what you mentioned before, which I think is important, about every Yid is a separate mitzvah of Ahavas Yisrael, and how you could do it on your own? It's not something that has to be publicly displayed. Anything else?
He has another, like a lamdish of art, when he's talking about destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. So he says, let's say you decide to give me this cup as a gift. Okay, you gave me the cup as a gift. Now, let's say you didn't like me that much, and you decide I'm not giving it to you as a gift. I'm not going to give it to you. Okay. Once you gave it to me already, taking it back means you're really upset with me, right? If you decide not to give it to me to begin with, no. But to take it back, he says, by Hashem, there's no difference. There's no difference between not giving and taking back, because Hashem is constantly pumping energy into creation. So there's no difference to Him not to give and taking back is both the same thing. And therefore He says we have to view not being given the Beis HaMikdash no different than being taken away from us. So he's like, it's more developed there, but I'm saying everything is with a, with a lumdus.
The
lumdus, right.
The lumdus. Even though, Chazal say that every door,
right, but I'm saying he brings it out, and he goes further, and he says every generation, as time goes on, the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed this year, but look the world that He brought us into. It means He brought us into a world of iPhones, a world of technology. The Churban was into this world. Look at the not a Churban of 1,000 years ago. We had Tanam and Amoraim. It's a new Churban.
So it's almost like the destruction is reborn.
It's a more decadent world, so it's a bigger Churban. Look at the world that we came into as a Churban. It's like he takes everything and he just gives it more of a, something you can hold on to.
And that's part of the flavor of the Beis Halevi. It's a rich reading and learning experience. If there was a takeaway from the Beis Halevi's essay on Ahavas Yisrael, because there's so much to unpack as far as this sefer is concerned. It's, people are going to read it, and sometimes it's tafasta merubaloi tafasta. It's like so much, and each of us on our own personal level have to work, just like on Bitachon, you don't go from 0 to 60. It's a gradual process, and it's also something we spoke about, how Bitachon needs reinforcement every day because we're surrounded by a world that's so teva and hishtadlus, and we're so immersed in that world of, okay, what we do is going to bring that effect, the cause and effect. It's like we're drowning in it. That's how I saw that. The Chavetz Chaim says that because we're so surrounded by that, we have to really learn for a Bitachon for an hour a day. I saw brought down Shem the Chavetz Chaim, that we really should be spending an hour a day learning Bitachon to counteract everything else that we see the entire day. With Ahavas Yisrael also, it seems that in the Teva, the Rebbeinu Shalom created...
As you're talking, I thought it was Dvar Torah.
Yeah.
Hot off the press.
Okay, go ahead.
Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So we say Hashem Echad, it's brought down, I think it's a Zohar, you have to cover your eyes. What do you have to cover your eyes for? So I once heard, because everything you see with your eyes is counter to Hashem Echad. It's all contrary to Hashem Echad. But the Gaon of Vilna, as Rav Olbe used to quote, the beginning of Shema Yisrael is Shema Yisrael, Machelek Klal Yisrael. I can't say Kriya Shema unless I'm Machelek Klal Yisrael. It could be, it doesn't say you say Shema Yisrael and then you cover your eyes when you say Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, which would be mashma that everything around you is also contrary to Shema Yisrael. So you have to, both of those are the two forces that the world are saying is that don't love your friend. You know.
Right. You're saying that even that component of being part of a unified Klal Yisrael, we're also constantly
fighting
being tested.
Yes.
And it may not be necessarily in that, we think of really hating someone, but maybe in a jealousy form. That type of lack of Ahavas Yisrael, where maybe we don't fagin the next yid that he should be matzliach. I said over a vart not long ago about Toivayin, that the ultimate, it's a longer shtickle, but the main vart is that the ultimate Toivayin is from Rabbi Povarsky said, the Yalkut says that the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu was called the Toivayin was for two demonstrations. Number one, because the Torah was given to him and he shared the Torah ki'ilu with Klal Yisrael, and also when he benched Yeshua as the future leader of Klal Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to put one hand on Yeshua and he put two hands. So Rabbi Povarsky, how is that a demonstration of Toivayin? If I have $100 and I give it to you, and now I don't have those $100, that's a Toivayin, someone with a good eye. But with two hands on Yeshua, blessing him, that's a Toivayin, or sharing the Torah with Klal Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't lose anything. So he said so beautifully that a true Toivayin is someone who wants the other person to have it as good or better than he did. So when Moshe Rabbeinu benched Yeshua to be the future leader of Klal Yisrael, he benched him that you should be as great a leader as I, if not greater. And the same thing with sharing Torah with Klal Yisrael. He wanted Klal Yisrael to steig and to grow in Torah as great, if not greater than he. And Rebbe brings it out in a very human way. You go over to someone and you ask him about his friend, about his house, his car. He says, I don't mind if my friend has a house as nice as mine, or a little less, but not nicer. That's the human condition. The human condition is we don't want others to have it as good or better than we do. And that's part of Ahavas Yisrael. I think we're surrounded by that when we live in a community. There's we'll call it competition, about where people are in different stages. And that's really where Ahavas Yisrael plays such an important role of, us not just forgetting someone, but loving them so much that we're happy. We're happy. We're not just, begrudgingly taking satisfaction in their success. That's part of real Ahavas Yisrael. It's a real avodah, right?
Yeah,
it's
for
not.
Sure. Talking about Rabbi Povarsky, in the back of the book, there's gedolim stories, separate section, and besides the actual book and the appendix, there's also a section on Yom Tovim throughout the year. Obviously, it goes through the year, and there's a gedolim stories.
I love the stories in here are off the charts.
So the last story, maybe you could, I don't know if you heard this. This is not in print. Is about Rabbi Povarsky. I heard this from the Shemitah farmer from Karen HaShvi, stayed in my house, and he was in Chicago. And he met Beryl Povarsky, and he said, my name is Avichai Kach. He says, Kach, I knew your father. I said, no, you know my father. This guy was borderline, modern Israeli farmer. His father, he says, yeah, he learned in Panovich Yeshiva. He says, no, you got the wrong Kach. He says, no. He says, yeah, he came to my yeshiva for a year. And he goes back to his father, and his father said that the Rav of the town told my parents, who were not that frum, your son has to go to yeshiva. They sent me to Panovich,
Really?
the yeshiva Ketana for a year. I wasn't happy. And yeah, of course I know Rav Beryl.
Wow.
And they ended up doing the Shemitah star. Beryl did the star with this farmer's, the father, this is old Talmud. It's around 40 years before, and you remember the person. That's an Ahavas Yisrael. Every Talmud is like a child, you never forget.
That's incredible. Any final thoughts about this?
Two final thoughts. Number one, again, the overview.
Okay.
And number two is, why now?
So talk about the overview for a second.
So the overview is written by none other than my esteemed father-in-law, Rabbi Nosson Sherman, and he's the Shenim Veranim Yiyu.
He hasn't lost his touch.
Has not lost his touch. Beautiful, beautiful, classic Rabbi Nosson Sherman overview that Klal Yisrael came to love his overviews. I think they're working on a book, all of his overviews put together in one, and it's just it's something to start off, a good appetizer to whet your appetite. And the last point is, why now? So my last trip to ArtScroll, I went to visit different gedolim. I went to Rabbi Pollack, who is a mashgiach in Slobodka. He's in his 90s, together with Rav Dov Landau. And I asked many gedolim the same question, not for now, all different answers. Post-corona, there's a lot of emotional illness and challenge, anxiety and depression's on the rise, and it's well known that the numbers of these things have. I asked him, what's a Torah way to pick somebody up from the anxiety and depression? And he told me, there's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim in which he gave an innovative explanation. Ma yofit, how pretty, ma na'amt, how sweet, ava, love, bitanugim, from all of the delicacies. There's nothing more delicious than love. There's nothing more delicious than loving somebody else. He says, when a person's down and depressed, they'll eat ice cream. They want to get some geschmack to pull them out of there, but they don't realize, like Aaron Kotler says, it just puts you more into depression. Now you just get more chumrius. He says the way to instill and pull a person out of his depression is by loving somebody else. A mother's love for her child, a Rebbe's love for his student, a love for the Bria. If you love somebody, there's nothing more delicious than loving somebody.
I love what you're saying, because when I interviewed Rabbi Makovsky about his book, Living Chesed, and one of the things I wrote in the foreword to that book, which I think applies here, and I think you'll agree, I wrote that chesed, as much as it does for the recipient, it does so much more for the giver, because it transforms who you are. When you become a giving person, it changes you. So Ahavas Yisrael is not about the other person. It's about what Ahavas Yisrael does to you as a mensch. Right? That's kind of what you're saying.
100%. So
about what's so delicious about it.
We, being Corona, we didn't have a chance to love our friends. We were cut off. We didn't have a chance to love Hashem. We couldn't come to shul. And that's why we're suffering. And I think that's why Hashem sent us Ahavas Yisrael and Bitachon now. We need Bitachon to connect to Hashem. We need Ahavas Yisrael to connect to our friends.
Well, I think this Sefer is going to help us do that. I highly recommend it to everyone watching. They should pick up a copy, buy one for themselves and one for their friend.
Beautiful.
Right? If you love your friend, what are you going to give him? The ultimate gift. This is it. A book on Ahavas Yisrael.
Beautiful.
But really, incredible work, incredible job. Kol hakavod for your Habatzas HaTorah, everything you do in the Syrian community and really beyond. Each work of yours, you seem to be like fine wine. You're getting better with age.
Thank you.
And it's an honor to speak to you once again. And we look forward to Beis Halevi on Anava, to many other works that you're working on. So keep up the wonderful Avodas HaKodesh. Thank you so much.
Thank you.